Hey guys, we're back and we're in a new studio, so let us know what you think. We've got an amazing video for you today. It's going to be the ultimate online coffee buying guide. We're going to cover roast level, processing methods, single origin versus blends. We've got a lot in store for you today. Welcome back, I'm Lizzie and I'm all about helping you make better coffee at home. If that's something you're interested in, hit the subscribe button. Like many of you, I absolutely love exploring the incredible world of coffee, but with what seems like millions of different coffees available online, it can be tricky to know where to start. Fear not, because in this guide, we're unveiling the secrets to making the best choices when it comes to buying coffee online, and also what to look out for. By the end of this video, I promise that you'll be a coffee whiz kid. First, I need to get a few things out of the way. No matter what coffee you're buying, you're always going to want to look for freshly roasted coffee. 7 to 21 days is the optimum time, and here's why. Less than a week and the coffee can be quite gassy and may be difficult to brew properly. Your cup might taste harsh or underdeveloped. Then between 1 and 3 weeks, you've got the prime window where it's most delicious. As coffee beans age beyond 21 days, they start to lose a bit of their flavour and their aroma. The coffee might taste stale or flat. It should still be adequate for a few months, but may not have quite as much life. These recommendations are for whole beans. Pre-ground coffee is a different story. Because of its larger surface area, more is exposed to the air, which accelerates the flavour degradation process. For pre-ground, you want to consume even sooner, ideally within a week of purchase. As always, we recommend you buy whole beans and grind them yourself. With that out of the way, let's begin by understanding your personal taste. Before you start choosing coffee, you need to stop and think, what do I actually want? Do you crave a bold and intense coffee experience, or are you drawn to brighter, juicier flavours? Generally, roast levels plays one of the biggest roles in the taste profile. On one hand, you have lighter roasts, which tend to be brighter and more acidic, and on the other hand, you've got dark roast, which is full-bodied and has a smoother taste. In a minute, I'm going to tell you about a big con in the coffee world when it comes to dark roasts that might surprise you. But first, let's start at the beginning of the process, light roast. Lighter roasts often give more flavour variation as they highlight the coffee's natural flavours. There's no set colour where a roast becomes a medium or dark roast, it's more of a spectrum. The more you roast the beans, the darker they become, and the more they start to move towards that chocolatey and caramel flavour. As you move towards the darker roast, you lose a lot of the bean's original characteristics. You also get French roast and Italian roast, which are the darkest of all and are arguably burnt. By this stage, you retain hardly any of the bean's natural characteristics. We made a video all about light versus dark roast, so I'll put a link to it around this video. When buying coffee online, just watch out for super dark roasts, as often this is just done for roasters to disguise poor quality beans. If you're buying super dark roasts, they're likely of lesser quality, so if you're paying a premium for them, you might want to be wary. If you like that bright, juicy taste, definitely go for a light roast. And if you want a more chocolatey and bold flavour, go towards more medium and dark roasts. But remember, roast level isn't the only factor. Even dark roasts from certain origins can surprise you with their complexity. Where your coffee comes from has a huge impact on its flavour, and this may be one of the ways you want to shop for coffee. Think about it like wine. Grapes grown in different regions produce unique wines, and coffee is no different. Factors like climate, altitude, and bean varieties all play a super important role. The first thing we need to take into account is the altitude and climate. These are kind of linked because as we go higher, the temperature becomes cooler. We can think of it in terms of slower growth versus faster growth. Higher altitude of 1,300 plus meters means cooler temperatures, which slows down the growth of coffee cherries. This slower maturation process allows the beans more time to develop complex sugars and flavours, resulting in denser beans with brighter acidity, floral notes, and sometimes citrusy hints. Lower altitude coffee, below 750 meters, means warmer temperatures, and this causes faster ripening of the coffee cherries. This faster growth leaves less time for complex flavour development, leading to beans that are softer and less dense. The resulting coffee tends to be smoother with less acidity and is sometimes described as earthy or nutty. For example, high altitude coffees from Ethiopia, like our Yirgacheffe, are known for their bright acidity and floral notes, and this is because the slower bean growth at altitude leads to denser beans packed with complex flavors. Now, we just talked about how altitude affects coffee flavor, but where exactly does this high altitude magic happen? First of all, Latin America. Think Colombia, Guatemala, Peru, and Bolivia. These regions are famous for their mountain ranges and volcanic soil, creating perfect conditions for coffee to thrive. These coffees are known for their clean and balanced flavors, often featuring hints of sweetness and fruit. Then, as we mentioned, there's Africa. Think Ethiopia, Kenya, and Rwanda. These are going to have more fruity and floral notes to them. Then you've got Asia, places like Indonesia, Papua New Guinea, even parts of India, which often boast bold, earthy flavors with hints of spice. Now, you may have noticed that all of these areas lie pretty close to volcanoes, and there's a good reason for this. The soil around volcanoes is full of minerals and nutrients from volcanic ash. It's like a built-in fertilizer for the coffee plants. This special volcanic soil, called andesol, is especially good for coffee because it helps the plants absorb important nutrients like potassium, which contributes to a coffee's flavor profile. Often these volcanic areas give the altitude needed as well. Now, on the flip side, you have the lower altitudes. In Asia, you have Vietnam, the king of Robusta. Robusta beans are known for their boldness and higher caffeine content, although a lot of this ends up being made into instant coffee. Robusta drinks also tend to be mixed with sugar to hide the bitterness. Then you have Brazil, which does have some high altitude coffee, but a significant portion grows at lower elevations. These beans are often used in popular coffee blends because of their affordability and their milder flavour. And then of course you have the variety. Within the Arabica species, there are unique varieties, each with its own personality. You've got bourbon, which is a highly prized variety known for its sweetness and complex flavour profile, often featuring hints of vanilla and chocolate. Another well-respected variety is Typica, known for its tea-like characteristics. Then you've got Geisha, which is a rare and highly sought-after bean, famous for its floral and citrusy aroma, with hints of stone fruit and bergamot. Beyond this, you have peaberry. While this isn't a specific bean variety, peaberry coffee deserves a mention. Pea berries are rounder than typical coffee beans because they develop without a twin bean in the coffee cherry. Due to their denser bean structure, pea berries are often thought to have a more intense flavour profile compared to their non-pea berry counterparts. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground, but there's one more term you might encounter while shopping online: AA and AAA coffee grades. These can be a bit confusing, so let's break it down. In some coffee-producing countries, particularly those in Africa and parts of South America, referring to a grading system based primarily on the physical size of the coffee bean. Generally, AA indicates large beans, with AAA meaning the biggest and potentially most expensive. However, it's important to remember that size alone doesn't necessarily equate to higher quality coffee. While larger beans may sometimes fetch a higher price, other factors like origin, processing method, and roast level play a much bigger role in determining the final flavour profile and quality of the coffee. Don't get too hung up solely on AA or AAA labels. Focus on the other details provided by the online retailer, such as the coffee's origin, processing method, and roast level. These will give you a much clearer picture of what the coffee will taste like. Which brings us on to the next way you may want to shop for your coffee. This is by far one of the most extreme variables that can affect your coffee's flavour. It's the processing method. How the bean is processed after harvest significantly impacts flavour. And to make things simple, I want to break it down into 3 categories: washed, natural, and honey. Let's start with washed because it's the most common method. It involves removing the fruit flesh from the beans after picking, then cleaning and drying them. It results in a clean tasting coffee with bright acidity and distinct flavours unique to the bean. Think citrusy notes, floral aromas, and a smooth body. While washed coffee offers consistent quality, some might find it a bit less complex compared to other methods like the natural process. We talked about roast levels earlier, but here's a secret weapon for online washed coffee purchases. Look for retailers who provide details beyond the roast level. Information about the origin farm, processing method, washed in this case, and variety can be game changers. Next up is the natural process. Unlike the washed method that removes the fruit flesh after picking, natural process coffee dries whole cherries in the sun, which leads to a fermentation of its sugars. This infuses the bean with intense fruit flavours, creating a cup that's sweet, complex, sometimes described as funky or winey. But here's the thing with natural processed coffee, it's a bit of a gamble. In ideal conditions, it produces phenomenal coffee. However, inconsistent drying or over-fermentation can lead to unpleasant flavours. My top tips would be to choose a reputable online retailer with a proven track record for quality beans. Look for positive reviews that mention their natural processed coffees specifically. Natural processed coffee benefits greatly from freshness. Look for retailers who roast their own beans or offer information about the roast date. Newer roast dates indicate fresher beans. Just remember, natural processed coffees can have bolder and sometimes unpredictable flavours, so be open to a new taste experience. If you prefer a clean and predictable cup, this might not be the best choice for you. Lastly, there's honey process. We made a video about this recently, so I'll put a link to it around the video. This intriguing method partially removes the fruit flesh from the coffee cherry, leaving some sugary mucilage layer behind to dry with the beans. It means it ends up somewhere in between washed and natural processed coffee. Honey processing can have different variations: yellow honey, red honey, or black honey, which indicates the level of mucilage left on the bean. Yellow is closer to washed and black is closer to natural. Remember, experimentation is key. Don't be afraid to try different processing methods to discover your favourites. So far we've covered a lot, but there's another important factor to consider: ethical sourcing and sustainability. This is where the coffee certifications come in. Think of coffee certifications like stamps of approval. They verify that a coffee has been produced according to certain social and environmental standards. But what does each certification actually mean? I'm going to tell you the top 3. The Fair Trade stamp means that farmers receive a fair price for their beans. Certified organic coffee is grown without synthetic pesticides or fertilizers. And the Rainforest Alliance certification shows that farmers are using sustainable practices that protect rainforest and biodiversity. Now you know how to choose fantastic coffee beans online, but how do you brew them to perfection? The good news is the brewing method you choose can actually enhance the unique characteristics of your coffee. Lighter roasts and coffees from high altitude origins often boast bright citrusy flavours, so brewing methods like a V60 pour over or a Chemex will allow more control over the water flow and the temperature, accentuating those delicate notes. Natural process and honey processed coffees can be complex with fruity or funky notes. Brewing methods like AeroPress or Clever Dripper offer a good balance between immersion and filtration, preserving these unique flavour profiles. Darker roasts and coffees from lower altitude regions tend to be fuller bodied and bolder. French press or cold brew methods emphasise these rich characteristics, creating a smooth and flavourful cup. Often espresso is going to be a dark roast as well, as it gives a better crema. But that's not to say you can't experiment and get some delicious light roast or medium roast espressos. Remember, this is just a starting point. Experiment with different brewing methods to discover what works best for your chosen coffee and personal taste. If you want to learn more about dark roast versus light roast coffee, then click the link here. And if you want to learn more about the crazy world of honey processed coffee, then click the video here. I hope this video has been useful to you, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button to stay up to date with our latest coffee tips. See you in the next video.